Hey guys, I'm going to be out of class for the next couple of days, so I just wanted to send out this video to help answer a few of those questions that you guys were having when it's pertaining to endothermic and exothermic. So I know there were some questions and there were some things that y'all were very not quite understanding. So we're going to review those today and try to help solidify those concepts. So let's go back real quick and review what we learned last week and defining endothermic and exothermic. Right, so endothermic. When we look at these two words for one, I want you to look at thermic. When we think of thermic, think of temperature or energy, okay? Specifically, when we're talking about endothermic and exothermic, we want to think energy, heat energy, okay? So I'm going to write that right here real quick. Thermic equals heat energy. So thermal heat energy. So now let's go in our notes that we did last week. I started on the top of my paper defining endothermic. So if you can see here, I have endothermic. If we look at the beginning of the word endo, it starts with en. We can symbolize endo as enter because enter starts with the same two letters, enter. So it's heat energy or thermal energy enters a system, right? So that's basically going from ice, right, to a glass of water because that ice has melted and it's turned into liquid water. And if we take that liquid water, we boil it. If we take it and we boil it, put it on the stove, we're going to get little bubbles and we'll get steam. So it goes to gas. So it goes from a solid to a liquid to a gas when we put heat energy. So think of this. I have a stove. If I put a pot of boiling water on that stove, right? After a while, this heat is going to be releasing into this pot, which is going to heat up my water. Okay? So after a while, that water begins to boil. And after a while, when we want to go put our noodles in, right? We all make ramen, we make macaroni and cheese. It tells us to wait until that water starts to boil. So when that water starts to boil, steam is released, okay? So it goes from liquid water, we add, or thermal energy is added and enters the pot to make boiling water, which will cause steam. Or we can even think about that in the terms of ice. You go outside, you have a glass of Coke or iced tea, Kool-Aid, Gatorade, you have it in ice. I like to chew on ice when I'm outside, it helps me cool down. You have it sitting in the sun. That sun will heat up that glass because the sun has energy coming out of it. Okay, this energy will then go into the glass, into this ice, and melt the ice to make liquid water. Okay, so energy is being released from the sun and it's being endothermic into the glass. It's entering the glass. So I'm going to do this. Heat energy is entering endothermic. So ice, heat energy enters into the ice, causing the ice to melt, producing liquid water. Okay. I like to draw, so I'm going to make sure I have my little house, my little room, whatever you want to call it. It can be a teepee, I don't care. I have a little man running in to the building. He's entering in. Enter. Endothermic. He's adding himself into the room. Okay? So now that we have that, remember, thermic is just energy, heat. Endo, enter. One other word that I want you to remember real quick that I told some of the other classes. Heat is absorbed in an endothermic process. Okay? So just like this pot of water over the stove, this pot of water is absorbing the heat that is coming out of the stove. The heat is entering in, and the pot is absorbing that heat. Okay? So now let's go down real quick to the bottom of the page, and we're going to talk about exothermic real quick. So exothermic, remember thermic, if I can spell correctly. I'm going to rewrite this. So thermic is heat energy or thermal energy. Okay? Exo exit. The heat energy exits out. So let's go back to our sun real quick. Our sun, you go sit outside, right? That sun is releasing its energy into you. So I'm going to get another piece of paper real quick and do it this way. So I have my sun. It is releasing, or energy is exiting out of this sun. And then it goes and enters into my glass of water or into myself when I get sunburned. But that's a whole different story. So exothermic heat energy is released or exits the system. So right here, I want you to look, another term I want you to look at is released. If energy is released, there was a question in your class kit about if more energy is released from a system, is it endothermic or exothermic? Anytime you see the word released, it would be exothermic because the only time you release energy is during an exothermic process. Okay? So what I'm going to do is for exothermic, I'm going to draw these same three figures that I drew up here down here. So I have a pot of boiling water, which is a gas. I turn it into liquid water. Okay. So that is a liquid. So you take this pot, you take this pot, you throw it into the refrigerator. It cools down. It releases its heat into the refrigerator. Does the refrigerator get hotter? No, because it stays cold constantly. But the pot of water loses its energy. The energy exits out of the pot and cools down. So we turn it into liquid water. That liquid can then turn into a solid block of ice. So I'm going to put water, and this is steam because we think of water, gas of water as steam when it comes out of the pot. So if I take this pot of water that I'm taking it out of the fridge now because it's cooled down, I throw it into the freezer. I pull it out several hours later after it's lost all of its energy, and now it's blocks of ice. Okay. I started with boiling water, lost energy out of the pot. I got plain liquid water. Okay. I took this liquid water, just this liquid, threw it into the freezer, and got ice. When I asked y'all about reactants in an exothermic process compared to its products, I started with a pot of water. This is, holy mackerel, this is on fire, this is boiling, this is active. This is some of you guys, after I give you a 12-pack of Red Bull, okay, so let me do this. I have a fourth grader, okay? I send my kid to school. I send her with a big bunch of pixie sticks, okay? We really don't care about COVID right now. They go and they share this pack of pixie sticks. Fourth graders are bouncing off the freaking walls. They are like completely chaotic and off the wall. All right, once they come down from their sugar high, okay, we start with them bouncing off the walls. They're like chaotic and completely obnoxious. Start with them here. They go and they crash, and they just like burn all of that freaking energy. They're done. They're out. They're solid. They go, oh my God, I just want to go to sleep. They are now the ice. They started out hyper and a lot of energy because they had that big pack of pixie sticks. They lost all of their energy after they burnt it out. We shoved them outside, made them run, go and play, whatever. They lost all their energy, and now they're just like crashing. So they started with a bunch of energy, okay? Start with a bunch of energy. They lose it. All that energy exits after they've been running and burning it off. And now they're like completely still and utterly comatose, okay? So reactants, them filled with sugar, have more energy than after they've burned it all off. Okay? We're going to cover that again in just a second. So right here, now I'm going to draw me another little figure. You at 3 o'clock, hauling butt out of exiting the building. So exit, exothermic. You are taking yourself out of the building. You're leaving it. You're exiting. That 3 o'clock bell hits. We release you. You exit. You haul butt out of there, saying, I'm out. I'm done. Adios. That's usually me about 4:30, 5 o'clock. So exothermic energy is released or exits the system. Endothermic enters or is absorbed into the system. Okay. I'm going to zoom out so y'all can see that for a second. Okay. I'm going to give y'all a minute to look at this. If you have not been in class and you need to write it down, do so now. Okay. You add energy. When you add energy into a system, like ice, you start with ice, you add energy, you go to a liquid. When you add even more energy, like you want to cook noodles, macaroni and cheese, spaghetti, whatever, you add more. The package always tells you wait until it starts to boil, then add your noodles in. But when your water starts to boil, one indication that it's boiling is you get steam. So you add energy, enters the system. Okay. Down here, I'm going to do this in a different color. Hopefully you can see this. energy exits the system. Okay. Again, I'll leave that for just a second for you to look at. All right, so now what I want y'all to do, I'm going to flip my paper over. Guys, and face-to-face students, go ahead and flip your note sheet over. Guys at home, just get a new sheet of notebook paper or whatever you're taking your notes on, okay? I'm actually going to switch out mine so it's easier for you guys to read because I know it's not as easy to see things on the computer as if I were in class. So I'm going to switch it out for a clean sheet of paper. And we're first going to start, get a nice color, with endothermic. Okay, so remember endothermic. What does that mean? If we take thermic, heat energy, and we break that down, En enters or is absorbed. So heat energy, you can either say enters or is absorbed by the system. So when we say system, that can mean anything from a glass of water to a pot or to a vehicle. Okay, you'll see this one. I have that one in a minute. Okay. So endo. When you start out with endo, remember you start out with something that is pretty cold or solid. Okay. We add energy into it. Okay. So that is like I take my glass of ice, I set it outside in the sun. Okay. The sun's energy, there's that other one. This. The sun's energy is entering into my glass of ice. It will melt my ice and make water. Okay. Another way to think of this, where is, another way to think of this is say I have a plant, a nice little flower, draw me a flower. I always draw my, okay, so I have my flower. It can't grow without some type of energy, okay? So I take, so the sun will come out, right? Shine down on the sun, onto that flower. That energy is absorbed by the flower or our plants to be able to grow, to produce our food. So like your strawberry plants, your tomato plants that sit outside, a banana tree, okay? They cannot produce fruit, vegetables, wheat. They can't produce anything without energy. The way they get their energy is they absorb it. The energy enters from the sun. Okay? So I'm going to do this real quick. So the energy from the sun is absorbed, or it's endothermic, enters into the flower. So the flower absorbs energy from the sun. It absorbs that energy. What would it be called? What type of process is this? It is endothermic. Okay. So if I were to have, I'm going to keep going back to my pot of water real quick. Okay. Where's my pot? I have my pot of water. Just like this flower, I put my pot of water on the stove. The heat energy is being absorbed by my pot to make boiling, to make my water boil. Okay. Right now, this pot of water does not have very much energy. Those molecules are moving around, they're whatever, bouncing all around. I add energy to it, a lot of energy. Those water bubbles start going chaotic and they're just bouncing off the wall. They don't want to be near each other. That is just like you when you're playing outside, you get so overheated and you're like burning up and you're like, don't touch me. I'm hot. Leave me alone. I'm hot, sweaty, icky, gross. Get away from me. These water molecules are fighting with each other. They're saying, stay away from me, get away from me, go, go, bouncing off of each other. Okay? So, in an endothermic process, see if y'all can see this, the reactants will have less energy than your products. Okay? Your products in an endothermic, so endothermic, the reactants will have a heck of a lot less, reactants will have less energy. Water, they're moving, okay, but they're fine. They're cool. You boil that water, you add energy into that system. They are bouncing off of each other. They don't want to be near each other. They're going chaotic. That is just like you giving four sedated uh, fourth graders that are just like, oh my God. And you want to have fun and you give them a 12 pack of Red Bull and you watch how fast they bounce. Very calm fourth graders. Red Bulls fourth graders. You gave fourth graders who are complacent. They're cool. They're doing what they're supposed to. You, as a high schooler, want to mess with them. Give them a 12 pack of Red Bull. Their energy goes, holy mackerel. Oh my God, they're bouncing off the wall. Okay, so products will have more energy than the reactants in an endothermic. So endothermic, you start with less energy and then you add energy into the system. So just like if you were to take your ice, place it in the sun, ice is solid, not really moving. That's like you want a freaking cold day and you're outside waiting for the bus. You're like, you get inside, you warm up, okay, and you start bouncing off the walls. Okay, endothermic, that's my favorite. Reactants have less energy than its products. Okay, I'll straighten that up a little bit. I'll give you a second. Pause it and think about that for a second and come. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and go on to exothermic. and give you some examples of exothermic. I'm going to do this. So, exothermic. Remember, thermic is heat, energy. Okay. And then exo means exit, excuse me, or released. So heat energy either exits, this is the way you can term it, either exits or is released from a system. Again, a system can be a pot of water, can be the sun, can be your stove, can be a burning car. Okay? When we say system in science, it's just the object that we're referring to, that we are actually manipulating at that moment. So the surroundings of a system for a pot, it would be the stove, okay? I lost my other one. So in our case, for the pot is our system, if we're talking about endothermic. Let's go real quick to exothermic. Exothermic, we would think about our stove. This is our system. The heat energy exits out of the stove and into the pot. So this would be our system in an exothermic. In this exothermic example, our pot would be our surroundings. Or even if you had another burner right here, because if you ever go to your stove and you accidentally hit like right next to the burner and that's a little warm, that heat is exiting out into the surroundings of that stove. Okay? So let's go to real quick. Let me pause. So again, so real quick, we're going to go back to our flower and our sun example. We have our sun. We have our flower. Okay. Yes, I know that looks like a really bad flower. All right. When we're talking about exothermic, okay, we're looking at what is releasing the energy. In our picture right here, the energy is being released from our sun. It is exiting the sun to be able to go in to our flower. So it exits from the sun and thermal energy is released. So that's when you sit outside. I can't do this because I'm paler than a ghost. You sit outside and you sit out in the sun and you feel that sun's heat coming onto you. Okay? That heat is being released from the sun onto you. That's why you can feel it. Okay? So then it gets then you are endothermic. You are absorbing that heat energy. So let's go real quick. Many of y'all were having issues with when I have that worksheet identifying endothermic and exothermic and understanding that a combustion, so combustion Okay, so combustion is a forceful release of energy. Think of a firework. Okay, so firework, when you light that string on the firework and it goes boom, that is a combustion. It explodes. It is an explosion. Or it is things that actually, we'll cover this in a couple of weeks, but releases um, so combustion, all it is basically a release of CO2. It's the stuff that we exhale, but it is in a violent, violent release. So when you think of, have you ever heard a firework going off? If you heard down the road a couple of months back, down in Houston, we had a building that caught on fire and exploded. So combustion is just a violent release of energy. Okay. So when I think of that, a car exploding or a propane tank exploding, a firework going boom on the 4th of July on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. We had that just a few weeks ago. So that is a violent release of energy. It was violent and it just goes boom, releases. And that is like when I know when I get a little irritated and I hit the desk sometimes, I have violent release of energy. I know some of you guys have a lot of testosterone or whatever. Y'all do get into a little bit of a tizzy and fights or whatever. Do not condone it whatsoever. But I'm using it as an example. You have that violent release of pent up energy in you. Okay. Or when you're in basketball, okay, you go into a squat to be able to throw a ball. You're releasing that energy to be able to move that ball. Okay, so exothermic, it's exiting the system. It's being released. That's like, I don't have my lighter up here. The lighter example I used in class. I lit the fire and I was able to hold my hand and go around that lighter. I can feel that heat exiting out of that lighter. An exploding car, exploding propane tank, um, a stove burner are all exits of thermal energy. It's releasing that energy, exiting out. Okay. So in an exothermic exothermic process, your reactants. So I start with a pot of water, pot of boiling water. This is what I'm starting with. This is my reactant. Okay. I take this pot of water, I turn the heat off, I throw it in to the refrigerator and come out with just regular water. I start out, those bubbles are going chaotic, they're violent, they're releasing a lot of energy. Okay. So this has a lot of energy in this pot of water. This is what I start with. All right, this is, let me get a color that you can see. A reactant. This is my reactant. That's what I'm starting with. I put it in the refrigerator and it's converted into plain water, just a regular liquid. All right, my product, what I finished with, what I ended with. This has a lot less energy than this boiling water. Now, if I were to throw this into the freezer, this has a heck of a lot of energy. It's like fourth graders on Red Bull. This is like y'all drinking coffee before class and y'all still falling asleep. Okay? This is y'all at 3 o'clock. Okay? 2:59. 2:59 p.m. That's y'all. Yeah, I don't want to do it anymore. Oh my god. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. All right? you have a lot less energy than you did at 12 o'clock when you had lunch. So I go to ice. I go from this pot of water to ice. I have a, oh, let me get that in the picture. Go from a regular pot of water to ice. This ice has even less energy than this pot of water. Okay, let me do this. Scroll that. So a heck of a lot more energy. A lot of energy. Fourth graders on Red Bull. Okay. They lose their energy. They're starting to lose it. They completely and utterly lose it and they're comatose on the ground. So exothermic reactants, what you start with, there we go. What you start with, so reactants are what you start. Starting materials. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. A real situation. All right, you start with a lit burner. Okay, a lit burner. Think of the burner. You turn that burner on. This is exothermic. What happens when you shut the gas or the electricity off on this burner? All of your energy is now gone. It is no longer exothermic. The energy is gone. Your glass of water, you start with the glass. This is your reactants. This is what you start with. You throw that into the freezer. It freezes. The product is what you end with, or your finished material. I'm going to move it up. Finished material is ice. You go from water. Molecules are moving. Yeah, they're moving a little bit. Then it goes into solid ice. Not moving very much. Okay? So exothermic. Reactants have a heck of a lot more energy than your products. Okay? Because some of y'all were thinking, well, it's releasing it, so it's going to end up less. That's not what I'm asking you about. I'm asking you about the reactants. When you lit that match, it became exothermic. When you blow that match out, blew it out. What happens to the energy in that match? There's no more energy. Okay? So, prime example, going back to our burning car, right? Our burning car. That has a lot of energy right now with that fire. Firefighters come, blow the fire up. They use all of their techniques. Now it's just a crumpled up skeleton of a vehicle. Still a car. It was releasing energy a minute ago. Firefighters put it out. What happened to the energy? It decreased in the product. There is no energy left. Okay? So we're going to get to it in a couple of weeks of conservation of energy. You can lose energy. So this was losing energy. It lost it into this ground, but not all of it went into your ground. Some of it went into the air, okay, and produced water vapor. So when I'm asking, my reactant had a heck of a lot of energy. They put it out. my product didn't have a whole lot of energy. It was gone. Okay. So for going back to endothermic real quick. So endothermic. Okay. Ooh, you endothermic. Go into our pot of water. Pot of water on a burning stove. That energy is being absorbed, entering into that pot. After a few minutes, energy increases in that pot. So the reactant is the original pot. Okay. The product is that boiling water because it's entering into here. This is my system because we're talking about endothermic. This is absorbing the heat. Comes out with a lot more energy. Let's go back to our flour for 1 second and then we're done. Zoom into our flour. Think about a flower. It starts off in a seed, right? That seed gets planted. You give it water, you give it energy from the sun. Where's that ground? So this is the ground. That seed is planted in the ground. That seed begins to bloom and gain energy because of that sun. Okay? That sun adds more and more energy to it. So as it goes, that flower keeps growing. Okay? As it grows, it finally turns into a full grown plant. My reactant for endothermic, I started with the seed. That didn't have a whole lot of energy. And it absorbed into a full grown plant that can give us our tomatoes, that can give us our potatoes, give us our corn, give us our bananas. Then it has the energy stored in it because it have already absorbed it to give us our food. So reactants, we started with a little seed. It absorbed energy to turn into a full grown plant that's able to produce energy and give it off. Okay. I hope this helps. I'm hoping to be back in class by the end of the week. Today is January 12th. It is a Tuesday. I'm hoping to be back in class by the end of the week. Hopefully everything goes okay with my dad. Some of y'all know the story that's going on with him. So as you can see, I'm well. There's nothing wrong with me. So any rumors that are going around concerning other issues, not affected. I just wanted to let y'all know that. So I hopefully will be back, as long as everything is okay with my dad, be back in class by the end of this week. So until then, I will see y'all next time, and Talons up, Falcons.